What makes an ordinary man transform into one of the most notorious killers in history? How could a seemingly quiet, lonely individual become the inspiration for some of the most terrifying horror characters ever created? This is the chilling, true story of Ed Gein, the man who haunted the nightmares of a generation and left a dark legacy that still lingers in the shadows. In 1957, the small town of Plainfield, Wisconsin, was rocked by the disappearance of a local woman, Bernice Worden. Little did anyone know, this disappearance would lead investigators to uncover one of the most grotesque and unsettling crime scenes the world had ever seen. Ed Gein, a quiet, seemingly harmless man, would become infamous for his chilling actions that would forever change the landscape of true crime. People still search for answers to this day. What happened to Bernice Worden? Was Ed Gein caught before he could commit more murders? And perhaps the most terrifying question of all, what drove him to commit such unimaginable horrors? The investigation into Bernice Worden's disappearance quickly led authorities to Ed Gein's farmhouse. Once inside, they uncovered a macabre collection of human remains. Authorities discovered skulls used as poles, human skin turned into furniture coverings, and a human face fashioned into a mask. But this was only the beginning of a terrifying truth that would unravel in the coming days. Gein's crimes weren't just about murder, they were about possession. He exhumed the graves of recently deceased women and transformed their bodies into trophies, creating a twisted homage to his deceased mother, whom he had been obsessively devoted to. What drove him to mutilate these bodies and keep them as his twisted creations? Was it just a sick fantasy, or was there a deeper psychological need that pushed him to this? The investigation revealed that Ed Gein had murdered two women, that he had no remorse. He even confessed to killing Bernice Worden, though he claimed he had no real memory of doing so. The evidence left behind was too overwhelming to deny, and Gein was arrested. But the unanswered questions remained. What made Ed Gein snap? Was he always capable of such violence, or did something in his life push him over the edge? Many point to his abusive relationship with his mother, Augusta, whose influence was so overpowering it seemed to control every aspect of his life. Was Gein a victim of his upbringing, or did he have a dark side from the start? Some argue that his strange attachment to his mother created the perfect storm for a monstrous transformation. Others wonder, could this have been stopped? Did anyone see the warning signs? Why did the community never suspect the horrors that lay beneath the surface of the quiet, solitary man? Ed Gein's case continues to capture public fascination for a simple reason: he was ordinary, yet extraordinarily twisted. The fact that a man who seemed so unremarkable could commit such horrific acts leaves us all wondering, could we ever have recognized the signs? But what truly keeps people coming back to Gein's story is how his crimes fueled some of the most iconic horror films ever made. Psycho, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Silence of the Lambs, all of these characters were inspired by Ed Gein's twisted legacy. Norman Bates, Leatherface, and Buffalo Bill were born from the horrors Gein inflicted on his victims. But it's not just the movies that keep people talking. What's the real truth behind his actions? Was he just a mentally disturbed man? Or was there a method to his madness that we still don't fully understand? Expert psychologists and criminologists have delved deep into Gein's psyche, trying to make sense of his motives. Some argue it was his obsessive need for control. Others suggest it was a desperate attempt to resurrect the mother he could never truly escape. But the most chilling question still remains: what was Ed Gein's true motive? Could his horrific acts have been prevented? Or was his twisted mind doomed to create a legacy of terror that still haunts us today? Could there be more to this story than we've ever known? Look, in part 1, we uncovered the terrifying truth about Ed Gein's gruesome crimes. But there's so much more to the story. What's the real reason behind his chilling obsession with death and his twisted, mother-driven fantasy? What did we miss during the investigation? And why did Ed Gein's horrifying legacy continue to haunt the world long after his arrest? In the first part of Ed Gein's story, we learned about the horrors discovered inside his farmhouse, the human remains, the body parts, the macabre trophies. But what many still can't wrap their heads around is why a man like Ed Gein would commit such heinous acts. Was it just madness, or was there a more calculated, twisted reason? Ed Gein's obsession with his mother was evident in everything he did. But was there more to his psychosis than just an unhealthy attachment to the woman who dominated his life? Some experts argue that Gein's early life and the traumatic relationship with his mother planted the seeds for his dark future. But what if there was something deeper at play? Could the community have done more to recognize the signs, Or was Gein's madness simply too well hidden in plain sight? After his arrest, Gein was examined by psychiatrists who diagnosed him with schizophrenia. However, they couldn't fully explain the level of control he had over his actions. Forensic experts believe that Gein's killings were not just about murder, they were about his twisted need to become a woman. His most disturbing act involved constructing a suit made from human skin, which he reportedly wore around the house to feel like his deceased mother. But that still doesn't answer the big question. Why did he start killing in the first place? Was it simply the need to fill a void, a way to cope with his mother's death, or did something trigger his violent fantasies, leading him to take matters into his own hands? Gein's first confirmed victim was Mary Hogan, a tavern owner he murdered in 1954. Her body was later discovered in Gein's farmhouse, along with pieces of her remains, which had been carefully preserved and transformed into gruesome souvenirs. But it was Bernice Worden's death in 1957 that truly brought his twisted world into the light. Gein's methods were shocking, but what's even more chilling is the possibility that his killing spree could have gone unnoticed for much longer if not for Worden's disappearance. What clues did law enforcement miss during their initial investigation into Gein's activities? The more we learn about Gein, the more questions arise. Could Gein have been stopped earlier? His quiet nature and odd behavior made him seem harmless to the people in his community. But the real question remains, why did no one ever suspect the horrors he was hiding? Gein's family history plays a crucial role in understanding his mindset. His mother, Augusta, was a devout and deeply controlling woman who kept Gein isolated from the world. Many experts believe that Augusta's extreme influence over him fueled his twisted fixation with her and ultimately led to his violent acts. Could his upbringing have been the tipping point that led him to commit murder? But perhaps the most disturbing unanswered question is, was Gein's insanity a result of his environment, or was he born with something darker inside him? His early life, steeped in religious fanaticism and isolation, may have shaped the monster he became. But was there a darker force driving him from within, one that no one could see? The story of Gein continues to fascinate people worldwide for a simple reason. He was an ordinary man who did extraordinarily terrible things. How could someone so seemingly unremarkable commit such atrocities? The mystery behind Gein's actions and the twisted legacy he left behind fuels public obsession. But it's not just his crimes that make him captivating, it's the questions that still linger. Gein became the real-life inspiration for some of the most famous horror figures in pop culture. Norman Bates from Psycho, Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Buffalo Bill from The Silence of the Lambs. These characters became the stuff of nightmares, drawing from the eerie, unsettling life of a man who once lived quietly in a small town, hiding unspeakable horrors behind closed doors. But there's still one thing that many people are desperate to understand: what drove Gein to kill. Was it his obsession with his mother, his mental illness, or something even darker? The mystery of Gein's dark mind may never be fully understood. Could his crimes have been prevented if someone had intervened sooner? Was his psychosis truly the result of a disturbed upbringing? Or was it something that no one could see coming? What twisted legacy did he leave behind? And what shocking revelations are still waiting to be uncovered? In parts 1 and 2, we uncovered the horrors of Gein's crimes and explored the chilling motives behind his twisted mind. But the questions remain: what happened after his arrest? What was his trial like? And perhaps most haunting of all, what lasting impact did his crimes leave on the world? Let's dive into the final chapter of this terrifying story. By now, the details of Gein's crimes have sent shockwaves through the true crime world. From his disturbing obsession with his mother to the grotesque remains he kept in his farmhouse, it's hard to imagine how anyone could live such a horrifying reality. But now we must answer the lingering questions. What happened after Gein's arrest? And how did the world react to the horrors that had been uncovered? In 1957, after his arrest for the murders of Mary Hogan and Bernice Worden, Gein was quickly evaluated by psychiatrists. Though he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, he was declared fit to stand trial, and his case would become a landmark moment in the quickly evaluated by psychiatrists. Though he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, he was declared fit to stand trial, and his case would become a landmark moment in the understanding of mental illness and criminal behavior. But Gein's story didn't end with his arrest. It left behind an indelible mark on the small town of Plainfield, the American public, and the world of horror. the investigation into Gein's crimes turned the small town of Plainfield into a national spectacle. The farmhouse, which had been the site of unspeakable horrors, became a focal point for investigators, journalists, and the public. What they had found was a nightmare in plain sight. A man who had transformed his twisted fantasies into a gruesome reality. But as horrifying as his actions were, the question still lingers: how did he evade detection for so long? After Gein's arrest, his trial began in 1958. The proceedings were as shocking as the crimes themselves, with the public eagerly following every new development. Gein's defense attorneys argued that he was not guilty by reason of insanity, citing his mental health history and his deep attachment to his mother. In the end, Gein was declared insane and committed to the Central State Hospital for the Criminally Insane. He spent the rest of his life in confinement, never standing trial for the full extent of his actions. What's chilling is that Gein's case became a turning point in how mental illness and criminal behavior were viewed in the legal system. His case led to changes in the way criminal responsibility was assessed, leaving an enduring legacy in the world of forensic psychiatry. But the question remains: what was it about Gein's childhood and mental health that led to such horrific actions? Even after Gein's arrest and conviction, many questions about his motives remain. Experts continue to debate the true nature of Gein's psychosis. Was he simply the product of his abusive upbringing, or was there something deeper and more inherently evil about him? Could his crimes have been prevented if someone had recognized the signs of his deteriorating mental health earlier? Gein's mental state was further complicated by his fixation on his deceased mother. It is unclear whether his obsession with recreating her image was purely psychological, or whether it was a coping mechanism for his deep-rooted feelings of rejection and inadequacy. Could Gein's need for control have led him to violence against women, or was it simply an extension of his desire to preserve his mother's influence over him? These unanswered questions continue to haunt not only the field of criminal psychology, but also the collective consciousness of those who are still fascinated by the twisted story of Gein. Gein's case remains a cultural touchstone because it embodies the ultimate blending of real horror and fiction. The man who inspired Psycho, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and The Silence of the Lambs left a lasting mark on the horror genre. But beyond the movies, Gein's crimes remain compelling because they tap into our darkest fears. The idea that the most terrifying monsters can hide behind the most ordinary faces. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of Gein's story is that, to this day, we still don't fully understand what made him the way he was. Was he born a killer, or was he shaped by an abusive, isolated childhood and a deep obsession with his mother? The fact that these questions remain unanswered only adds to the fear and fascination surrounding his legacy. As time goes on, Gein's name continues to resurface in discussions of criminal psychology, true crime, and horror. His life serves as a reminder that the most horrifying people often lurk in the places we least expect. But here's the question that still haunts us. Could Gein's monstrous actions have been prevented? Was there a turning point in his life when someone could have intervened? Or was his descent into madness inevitable? And what other disturbing details about his life have been buried, never to see the light of day? The story of Gein may be over, but the questions he left behind are far from finished. Stay tuned for future investigations into the minds of history's most chilling killers. Subscribe, like, share, and leave a review on the comment below.